Mom texted, "We're too exhausted from your sister's vacation to be at your graduation." I replied, "Enjoy your rest." They had no idea I was Harvard's valedictorian. When my speech aired on national television, the phone calls came nonstop. "Oh, you guys, let me tell you about a moment that still burns in my memory. Imagine pouring your entire soul into something, achieving a dream that felt impossible, only to have the people who should be your biggest cheerleaders send a text saying, 'We're too tired.' Can you even believe that?" My own parents, moments before my biggest triumph, decided a vacation was more important. I just replied, "Rest well." But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have known, was that I was about to walk across a stage at Harvard as the valedictorian. And that next morning, my speech went viral. By noon, their phones were ringing off the hook, reporters asking why their seats were the only ones empty. Have you ever felt utterly dismissed by your own family, only for your success to hit them like a tidal wave, forcing them to confront what they truly lost? Stick around, because what happened next truly changed everything. When I think back to my childhood, it's not laughter or chaos that I recall most vividly. It's the silence, that particular, heavy quiet that followed any celebration that wasn't for my little sister, Chloe. We grew up in a tiny Indiana town, where everyone knew your last name and your worth was often whispered about at Sunday church. For the Hearts, that pride had one name, Chloe. She was pure sunshine, the golden child who effortlessly drew all the attention. Me, I was just Vanessa, Chloe's sister. That sentence became my label, a permanent footnote to someone else's vibrant story. I still remember my 10th birthday. Not because it was special. It wasn't, but because it was the day I realized how completely invisible I had become. Our living room was a sea of pink and gold balloons, but they weren't for me. Mom had ordered a cake that read, "Congratulations, Chloe," in thick white frosting. My sister had just won her first dance competition. I stood beside it, smiling for pictures that were never mine, holding a slice of cake with Isabel written on the napkin. When I hesitantly asked if we could light candles for my birthday, Mom just said, "Oh, honey, we have all this set up. Let's not make it complicated." So, I clapped for Chloe, just like everyone else. Later, after everyone had gone, my gift sat on the table, an unused notebook from Dad's office, the kind he got free at work conferences. Midwest Accounting Expo 2006, it read. That night, as Chloe slept surrounded by new pink trophies, I opened that notebook and began to write. It was my first quiet act of rebellion, pouring onto paper everything I couldn't say out loud. Chloe was 2 years younger, but always 2 steps ahead in everyone's eyes. Teachers adored her. When people realized we were sisters, they'd raise their eyebrows and say, "Really? You two don't look alike," as if that explained everything. Chloe was graceful, easy, the kind of girl who was effortlessly loved. I was the one who fixed the Wi-Fi, stayed after class to set up labs, or read manuals for fun. It didn't matter how high my grades were or how much I helped out. Family conversations always circled back to her. Her recital, her new hairstyle, her smile that lit up a room. My name rarely came up unless someone needed help with a DVD player or Christmas lights. There's one spring afternoon that still sits like a stone in my gut, the middle school science fair. I'd spent 3 weeks building a wind turbine from junk parts. It shimmered under the gym lights. When they called my name for first place, the applause was like sunlight. I looked for Mom, Dad, maybe even Chloe. Empty seats. A sharp hollow ache settled inside me, even as I smiled for the camera. Later, Mom apologized, not looking at me. "Sweetheart, we really wanted to come, but your sister had her prom fitting." Dad just nodded. That was the night I learned my achievements could only exist in silence. After that, I stopped expecting to be seen. I found comfort in small, hidden victories, tinkering with old radios, fixing a neighbor's lawnmower. Machines were predictable, fair. If something didn't work, there was a reason. I wish people worked the same way. Only Grandma Helen truly noticed how I shrank. She lived 2 blocks away, in a house always smelling of cinnamon and lavender. One evening, after the science fair, she found me in the garage, hands covered in grease. She didn't scold me. She just watched and said softly, "You don't need applause to be valuable, sweetheart. Some of the brightest stars burn quietly where no one looks." Her words, simple as they were, echoed louder than any praise I'd ever received. Over the years, I learned to live in that shadow without letting it crush me. At family dinners, I'd smile, nod past the dishes, and quietly withdraw. I became the calm one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need attention. They mistook my silence for weakness, but inside, I was collecting something powerful: patience, discipline, and the ability to stand on my own. Every time they forgot to show up, every time my name went unmentioned, I stored that feeling like energy in a battery. By 17, I was a master of quiet disappearance. Straight A's, debate club, volunteering at the library, but at home, none of it mattered. Chloe was still the talk of our small town. Her dance posters lined grocery store windows. My parents' conversations still orbited her next recital. I'd stay up late, the hum of my laptop a comfort, writing essays, tinkering with data. Words and numbers, they never lied, never shifted affection, never forgot. It was in those dark, quiet hours, with Chloe's laughter faintly floating from across the hall, that something awakened in me. I didn't want to compete anymore. I wanted to understand. Then, during my senior year, my AP English teacher, Mr. Lee, announced the state essay competition. Topic: the price of silence in modern society. My pen hovered, then flew. I didn't have to think. I just described my world. The quiet dinner table, the unspoken favoritism, the art of living unseen. I disguised it as social commentary, citing psychology journals. But every sentence was carved from my own life. I expected nothing. Weeks passed. Then Mr. Lee stopped me in the hallway, grinning, holding a letter embossed with the state seal. "Vanessa," he said, "you won first place." A rush of adrenaline, a rare spark of validation. The local paper even called the house. Mom answered, her voice bright, until she realized the story wasn't about Chloe. "Oh, that's nice," she said, glancing at me briefly. "But we can't do an interview. We're busy packing for Chloe's competition in Chicago." Dad added, "Good job, sweetheart." Without looking up, the conversation flowed back to Chloe. Invisible again. That night, I folded the award letter and slipped it into my drawer. I told myself I didn't need their praise. But my hands trembled, not from anger, but from the stark realization, no matter what I did, home would never truly see me. That same week, Mr. Lee called me into his classroom. "I've been watching you for 3 years," he said. "You think small because they make you feel small, but you don't belong here forever, Vanessa." He wanted to recommend me for Ivy League schools. Harvard, Yale, Princeton. The words felt foreign. Harvard was for news articles, not for the girl who fixed Wi-Fi. But he handed me a sealed envelope. "I've written you a strong letter of recommendation. Don't let anyone talk you out of applying." That night, I stared at the Harvard application. I filled it in slowly, each click heavy. For the essay, I wrote about building belonging in invisible spaces. It wasn't dramatic, it was honest. I described how silence could be both a wound and a source of strength, how those unseen learn to listen deeper. I sent it, heart pounding. When Grandma heard about my essay, she came over. She unwrapped an old silk scarf, revealing a small, leather-bound notebook. "It was mine when I was your age," she said. "I wrote poems in it when life made me feel small. Write your voice before the world tries to rewrite it for you." I traced its worn edges. For the first time, I felt seen, not as Chloe's sister, but as someone with her own story. Months later, in a snowstorm, the letter came. Crimson crest gleaming through the frost. My hands shook as I tore it open. "Dear Vanessa Hart, it is my pleasure to inform you that you have been accepted to Harvard College." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I stood there, wind cutting my face, but inside, warmth bloomed. Proof. Every quiet hour, every ignored victory had led to this. I walked inside. Mom was on the phone, laughing about Chloe's new recital costume. I waited, then held out the letter, unable to hide my trembling. "I got in," I whispered. She blinked. "Harvard? That's far, isn't it? Are you sure you want to go that far?" Dad looked up. "You'd have more support if you stayed close. Chloe could use your help with applications next year." Their words felt like snow, soft, cold, heavy. I nodded again, folding the letter, pressing it to my chest. That night, I wrote in Grandma's notebook, "They don't see it yet, but someday they will." I didn't know then that Harvard would become more than a school. It would be proof of my existence beyond their shadow. The beginning of my story. And even if they reacted like it was nothing, I could feel the wind changing. I'd taken my first real step away. Stepping through the gates of Harvard Yard, I felt like I'd crossed into another world. The air was different, crisp, charged with ambition. I stood there, suitcase in hand, staring up at Memorial Church, whispering, "You made it." But under the excitement, a sharp ache. No one from home cared enough to see this. My roommate, Maya Patel, was everything I wasn't: outspoken, confident, endlessly curious. She introduced herself before I unpacked. "You must have fought hard to get here," she said, when I told her I was from Indiana. She had no idea how hard. Harvard was beautiful and brutal. Mornings smelled of espresso and ink. Nights glowed with laptop screens. I worked part-time at Widener Library, shelving heavy volumes. The scanner's beep, the rustle of old paper, it became a lullaby of survival. Some nights, I'd walk back to my dorm through the fog, rising over the river, stomach growling. Hunger was just another form of discipline. I learned to stretch everything: time, money, energy. Instant ramen was a staple. Maya teased me for eating cereal with water, but she never judged. "You're like iron," she said once, handing me half her sandwich. "Bend, but never break." Academically, I pushed myself. I joined Women in Tech, eventually leading it. I became a research assistant under Dean Alvarez, a mentor who believed fiercely in the power of inclusion in technology. "Talent means nothing if it isn't shared," she told me. That changed everything. I shifted my focus to using data and AI to improve medical access in low-income communities. For the first time, I wasn't just chasing grades, I was chasing purpose. But success didn't erase the loneliness. Each time I received an award or presented research, I'd glance at the chairs reserved for family. Always empty. The reserved signs fluttered, mocking reminders of who hadn't shown up. I told myself it didn't matter. But when other students ran into their parents' arms, that old ache returned. Mom's texts were rare, and never about me. "Your sister just got back from Italy. We're so proud of Chloe. She got a mention in the town paper." Never, "How are your classes?" or "We miss you." I used to reply politely. Eventually I stopped. It wasn't bitterness. It was exhaustion. You can only reach for someone so many times before your hands tremble from the weight of disappointment. Still, I built something of my own. Junior year, my team's prototype for optimizing medical supply distribution caught the attention of a Boston nonprofit. When they invited me to present, I emailed my parents the details, just in case. "That's nice, honey. We'll be in Nashville that weekend for Chloe's showcase. Send photos." I didn't bother. But that night on stage, explaining our algorithm, I imagined Grandma in the back, nodding proudly. It was enough. Maya became the closest thing to family. She always insisted I visit her family for winter break. "You shouldn't spend Christmas alone." But I usually stayed in Cambridge, volunteering, taking extra shifts. Going home didn't feel like home anymore. My final year, Dean Alvarez nominated me for the Harvard Innovation in Public Impact Fellowship. When I got the acceptance letter, Maya and I screamed so loud the RA came knocking. That night, she lit 2 candles, one for where you came from, one for where you're going. I watched the wax melt, realizing how much I owed the people who had shown up in small, quiet ways: teachers, mentors, friends, filling the empty spaces my family left behind. Commencement season arrived. I was shortlisted to deliver the student speech. When I got the confirmation, valedictorian speaker, my throat tightened. Every silent dinner, every ignored achievement, every lonely night had led to this. I wanted to tell my parents, to share a fragment of pride. Then my phone buzzed. A photo from Mom, Chloe on a Santorini beach, our beautiful girl living her best life. I closed my phone. I looked out at the lights flickering across the river. In the reflection, I saw myself, tired, older, but still standing. Grandma's words, "You don't need applause to be valuable." She was right. Maybe they would never come. Maybe that seat would always be empty. But I was done chasing their gaze. I would give my best speech, not for those who never showed up, but for those who did. Because if they wouldn't come to see me, the world would. The email arrived just after midnight. Campus silent except for the whisper of snow. I was revising a research proposal when my laptop pinged. Congratulations, you have been selected as the 2024 student commencement speaker. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. The cursor blinked, steady and alive. Out of thousands, they chose me. I stared, hands trembling. Then, a sharp, breathless laugh escaped me, the kind that comes from disbelief, not joy. I reread it twice, searching for a mistake. But it was real. I was the speaker, the voice of my class. The girl once forgotten at her own science fair would now stand at the podium of Harvard Yard. Maya burst in, having seen my message. "You did it!" she yelled, pulling me into a hug. We jumped around like kids who discovered gravity didn't apply. "You're going to make them cry," she said. The next week was a blur of meetings. My speech would be televised live, streamed nationally. The weight of it settled on me, beautiful, heavy, terrifying. I spent nights hunched over Grandma's old notebook, searching for words. I didn't want a perfect speech. I wanted an honest one. I thought of every empty chair I'd ever faced. The science fair, the research showcase, and the ones that would surely be waiting at my graduation. That's when the title came to me, from the empty chair to the open microphone. The first line came naturally. When they didn't see us, we learned to see each other. It wasn't just about me. It was about everyone overlooked, underestimated. I wrote about the janitor, about Maya sharing her last sandwich, about first-generation students working 2 jobs, about those who built dreams quietly while the world applauded someone else. During my first rehearsal, I stood at Sanders Theater, staring at the empty red velvet seats. "Good evening," I began, my voice shaking slightly. I used to think silence was my punishment, but now I see it was my training ground. The truth vibrated through me like music. Dean Alvarez, listening in the back, walked up. "You're not just speaking for yourself, Vanessa," she said. "You're speaking for every student who ever felt invisible. That's power. Don't be afraid of it." That night, I wondered if I should tell my parents. The hopeful part of me still believed maybe this time they'd show up. Maybe they'd be proud. But then a message arrived from Mom. Just got Chloe's itinerary. She's going to Paris for a law conference. Can you believe it? With a photo. Chloe posing by an airport lounge, champagne in hand. My fingers froze. I deleted my draft. I knew the truth I'd always refused to say aloud. They wouldn't come. Too tired, too busy. And I didn't want to give them another chance to choose someone else over me. This time, I wanted the truth to reveal itself without words. So I decided to say nothing. Let the world show them instead. The days leading up to commencement were exhausting, exhilarating. But beneath the noise, a stillness grew inside me. Every time I imagined my parents in the crowd, I no longer felt anger but distance, like remembering someone else's dream. 2 weeks before graduation, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "We're too tired from your sister's trip to attend your graduation, honey. Just got back from Europe with her. Flights were awful. We'll rest this weekend and celebrate properly when we see you next time. Love you." Too tired. That was their reason. Not an emergency, not financial strain. Just tired from following Chloe through Europe. For a long moment, I didn't move. Maya, across the room, sensed it. "Everything okay?" she asked. I nodded once, the smallest smile touching my lips. "Yeah," I said softly. "Just expect it." Then, without hesitation, I typed my reply, "Rest well." No sarcasm, no confrontation. Just 2 words that said everything. Because this time, I didn't feel the urge to explain or beg. I'd done all that before, and still, the chair had always been empty. That night, clarity settled. If they wouldn't show up, I would make space for those who did. The next morning, I quietly requested 3 family seats from the commencement office. One for my grandmother, one for my best friend, and one just to stay empty. The coordinator looked puzzled. For the 3rd seat, I wrote, "Reserved for who shows up." The next few days blurred. Beneath it all, a newfound peace. Maya asked, "You sure you're okay with them not coming? You don't even sound upset." "I'm not," I said truthfully. "I stopped hoping a long time ago. And maybe that's a good thing. Sometimes peace comes when you stop asking people to be who they've shown you they're not." She nodded. Then let's fill the empty seat with something better. Like what? Flowers, she said. Something beautiful. So we did. White tulips, Grandma's favorite, and a single crimson rose in the middle, Harvard's color. It wasn't about mourning their absence. It was about honoring presence. The kind that required no applause, no explanation, no perfection. Graduation morning. Golden light spilled across the cobblestones. I slipped into my gown and cap, pinning Grandma's silver brooch, shaped like a book. Maya fussed with her camera, ready to make history. I laughed softly. At Tercentenary Theater, the place was alive. Hundreds of crimson robes, families waving. I handed the usher my seating card. 3 seats, side by side, bathed in morning light. Grandma arrived as the bells rang, slow but steady. You left one open, she said, smiling knowingly. I nodded. Always. She touched the bouquet gently. It's perfect, she whispered. A place for whoever's heart remembers to show up next time. When Maya joined us, she tucked a tulip behind Grandma's lapel and winked. As I walked towards the stage, I looked back once. Grandma's face glowed, Maya adjusting her lens. And the third seat, empty but not lonely, gleaming with white tulips and that deep red rose. For the first time, the sight of that chair didn't hurt. It felt symbolic, no longer a reminder of what I lacked, but proof of what I had built. Love that showed up, even if from unexpected places. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The crimson sea of graduates before me. Somewhere among the rows, my parents' absence had already become irrelevant, because I knew who was there. And more importantly, I knew who I had become in the spaces they left behind. The morning of commencement felt like a dream. Bells rang, echoing through the sea of robes. The air smelled faintly of lilac. Flags rippled against the blue sky. I stood at the edge of the theater, thousands of chairs stretching across the lawn. For a moment, I just breathed. This was the sound of endings and beginnings, all at once. The orchestra began. Maya gave me a thumbs up. I glanced towards the family section. Grandma's name. Maya's name. And the third seat, crowned with white tulips and a single crimson rose. The seats that should have held my parents were empty. For a moment, the sight hit me harder than I expected. Even knowing, even preparing, it still felt like a tiny fracture under the skin. An old bruise. I saw families hugging, mothers waving flags, fathers snapping photos. All that joyous, proud, messy sound rose like a wave around me. Yet, in the center, those empty chairs stayed still. Then, as if to balance the silence, I saw movement. Grandma. Slowly, carefully, she made her way down the aisle, cane in hand, guided by an usher. Her pale blue coat shimmered. When she reached me, something inside me unclenched. She smiled, eyes bright. Today, she said, placing her hand gently over mine, you are seen. The words landed like a whisper and a thunderclap. I swallowed hard, tears too close. Thank you for coming, I managed, my voice barely a breath. Of course I came, she said softly. I wouldn't miss watching the girl they overlooked become the woman they'll never forget. She squeezed my fingers, turned, and took her seat beside the flowers. The crowd settled. The university president delivered her address. I tried to listen, but my own heartbeat drowned everything out. Every breath felt like it carried years. Every sleepless night, every empty dinner, every ignored success, all of it had led here, to the single moment where I was no longer defined by who hadn't shown up. When my name was announced as student commencement speaker, the world blurred. I stood, thousands of eyes on me. The applause rolled through the yard, then settled into silence. I walked towards the podium, the red carpet soft under my shoes. From the stage, the view was breathtaking. That one empty chair gleamed, a quiet declaration. The tulips swayed. Grandma lifted her head, eyes on me. Even from that distance, I could see her mouthing words I didn't need to hear aloud. I see you. A hush fell. The microphone buzzed faintly. I adjusted it, my hand surprisingly steady, and looked out. Good morning, I began, my voice carrying. When they didn't see us, we learned to see each other. A ripple moved through the audience. I spoke about the unseen students, the quiet ones who work behind the spotlight, who build foundations others stand on. I spoke of how belonging wasn't given. It was built, chair by chair, hand by hand. How silence had once felt like punishment, but became my strength. How absence taught me to create presence for others. As I spoke, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the stage in light. It felt like the world was listening. May we remember to leave no chair empty for those who come after us, I concluded. Because when the world forgets to see them, we must. The applause began slowly, then grew, filling the yard. Students rose, cheering, some wiping their eyes. I looked down one last time towards the family seats. Grandma was standing, tears glistening. Maya stood beside her, filming, laughing and crying at once. The empty seat remained, flowers trembling. I didn't feel lost anymore. I felt peace. That chair wasn't a symbol of rejection. It was a promise that I'd never forget where I came from, or what it took to get here. As the music swelled again, caps flew into the sky. For the first time, I joined in, throwing mine high, watching it disappear into the sun. When I stepped down, Grandma met me. "You did it," she whispered. "They may have been tired, but the world is wide awake now." I smiled through tears. In that moment, I knew the truth. I didn't need their presence to be seen. I was already shining, completely, finally on my own. The podium lights felt warmer than I expected, spilling gold across my gown. The air was still. I took one steady inhale, then glanced toward the family section. 3 seats, Grandma, Maya, and between them, that one empty chair crowned with white tulips and a single crimson rose. I let my eyes rest there. "Good morning," I said softly, my voice steadier than I felt. "If you look closely at the audience today, you might notice something small. Somewhere in this sea of faces, there's an empty chair." A few people shifted. I smiled faintly. I used to think an empty chair meant failure, meant no one cared enough to fill it. But over the years, I've learned something different. Sometimes the empty chair is proof that we showed up for ourselves, even when no one else did. I spoke about growing up where silence was often mistaken for strength, learning to smile through being overlooked. And when no one sat in the audience, I told myself it didn't matter. But here's the truth. Every time someone chooses not to show up for you, someone else quietly, humbly does. I looked towards the back rows, where the janitorial staff stood, watching. So today, I want to begin by thanking the people whose chairs are never empty because they never stopped showing up for others. The applause began softly, faculty first, then students. It built until it filled the yard. "At Harvard, we talk about excellence a lot," I continued. "But no one tells you that excellence often depends on the invisible ones. The friends who share notes, the dining staff who save a plate, the librarians who unlock rooms early, the professors who don't just read your essays, but your silences." I could see Maya filming, tears welling. Dean Alvarez sat near the front, her expression soft but proud. "I came here thinking success was about being chosen," I said. "But what I learned is that success is really about choosing. Choosing persistence over comfort. Choosing to see others when no one saw you. Choosing to stay kind, even when the world gives you every reason not to be." The audience was completely silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. For those of us who grew up believing we didn't have a seat at the table, listen to me. You don't need to wait for one. Build your own. That line. Build your own seat. It was the heart of everything. When you build your own seat, I continued, you stop chasing approval. You stop measuring your worth by who claps for you. You realize you were never supposed to fit into someone else's table. You were meant to create your own, and then pull up extra chairs for those still standing. The wind caught the corners of my paper. When they pushed us aside, we learned how to make space. When they spoke over us, we learned how to listen deeply. And when they forgot our names, we carved them ourselves into history. A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. Someone in the back called out, "Amen." "Look around you," I urged. Every person here today was carried by someone unseen. Maybe it was a mentor, a sibling, a grandmother, a stranger. Maybe it was the version of yourself who refused to quit. Whoever it was, remember them. Remember that they showed up. And when it's your turn, show up for someone else. I paused, then glanced again toward the family section. The camera operators noticed, lenses shifting. A broadcast camera zoomed in. The flowers, the sunlight, Grandma's hand on her cane. She lifted her head, smiling faintly as the camera found her. For a second, her eyes met mine. That image would go viral. I looked straight into the lens. To my grandmother, who always said, "You don't need applause to be valuable. Thank you. You showed up." And to anyone sitting in the crowd today, carrying your own kind of empty chair, this moment is for you. Applause thundered. I waited, eyes stinging, then lifted my chin. Titles don't define us. Degrees don't define us. What defines us is the courage to build, and the kindness to share what we've built. Because one day, someone will stand where we stand now. And the question won't be what you achieved. It'll be, who did you make room for? I let the silence stretch. May we all remember this. The tables of power are temporary. But the tables of compassion, the ones we build ourselves, last. A standing ovation. Faculty, students, even the choir. Flags waved, caps lifted. The cameras swept across the scene. From the corner of my eye, Grandma wiped her cheeks. "They see you now," she'd whisper later. But in that moment, I didn't need confirmation. I felt it. The orchestra began again. I stepped back from the podium. When I turned to walk off stage, the camera caught one last close-up, me looking over my shoulder. At that empty chair. Online, the broadcast clip would loop for days. She built her own seat. From silence to spotlight. #BuildYourOwnSeat. Students from other universities started sharing photos of their own ceremonies with notes taped to chairs, reserved for who shows up. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that for the first time, I wasn't proving anything. I was simply being. I glanced one last time at Grandma, at Maya, at the chair that once symbolized absence and now somehow belonging. Then I whispered to myself, not into the mic, but into the wind, "We're seen now." And when I stepped down, the crowd still on their feet, I realized this was never just my story. It was everyone's who had ever learned to build their own seat. When the ceremony ended, the air still shimmered with applause that hadn't faded. I stood at the edge of the stage, clutching my speech. My hands trembled, not from nerves, but from release. The years of silence had poured out of me. Maya found me first. "It's everywhere," she gasped, waving her phone. "Vanessa, they're clipping it." I frowned, half smiling. "Clipping what?" She turned the screen, the university's live stream replay. My speech, already uploaded, captioned, "Build Your Own Seat." Harvard student speaker moves audience to tears. In the thumbnail, a shot of me glancing at the empty chair, the flowers gleaming. I hadn't even walked out of the yard before the first notification buzzed through my phone. Then another. Then a flood. Mentions, messages, tags. At first, I thought it was classmates. But then Mom. Dad. Chloe. My thumb hovered. I didn't answer. I pressed mute, slipped it into my gown pocket. We took photos instead. Maya insisted on every angle. Grandma stood between us, clutching my arm. "You know," she said. "They're never going to stop talking about that speech." I smiled. "Maybe not, but I hope they remember why I said it." By evening, the university's social accounts had shared the clip. Boston 25 aired a segment. Harvard valedictorian delivers viral message. The reporter's voice narrated over my image on stage, with a subtitle, "From an empty chair to a full audience." That's when the texts started pouring in. From Mom, "Why didn't you tell us? Everyone's asking why we weren't there. You made it sound like we don't care about you." From Dad, "We look awful, Vanessa. Couldn't you have warned us?" From Chloe, "Wow. Guess we're the villains now, huh? Next time, maybe loop us in before you go public." I read each message slowly, then placed the phone face down. There was a time those words would have sent me spiraling, rewriting replies in my head. But not today. Today, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Maya, watching me, asked, "You're not going to respond?" I shook my head. "Not now. Today isn't about explaining. It's about graduating." She smiled. "Good," she said. "Because the rest of the world is about to start calling too." She wasn't exaggerating. Within an hour, my inbox was overflowing. Harvard Alumni Affairs, a TEDx curator, a fellowship program in Geneva. Each message arrived like a ripple, spreading wider and wider. My line, "When they didn't see us, we learned to see each other," became a trending hashtag. Through it all, My phone vibrated on the table. Mom calling, then Dad, then Chloe. Again. I could almost imagine their voices, the edge of panic, the sudden realization that the daughter they dismissed had become a headline they couldn't control. That night, as the campus grew quiet, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The adrenaline had worn off, replaced by a calm so deep it felt unfamiliar. I walked alone through Harvard Yard, the same paths I used to take when I felt invisible. I found an empty bench under an old elm tree and sat down. Across the way, I could still see the faint glimmer of the chairs where everything had unfolded. I pictured that empty seat again, not as loss, but as freedom. When I finally pulled out my phone, over 100 unread messages. Mom had written again. We saw it on TV. People keep asking if we're proud. Of course we are. We just wish you'd told us first. I let the words sit. Then I typed, I'm glad you saw it. Today was important to me. And I stopped there. No explanations, no accusations. Just a full stop. Peace doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it comes from refusing to reopen the wound. Before heading back, I called Grandma. I saw the segment again, she said. Your words, they're echoing everywhere. I didn't mean for it to go that far, I admitted. I know, she said. That's why I did. I smiled into the dark. They've been calling nonstop. I imagine so, she chuckled. Let them call. Let them sit with what they missed. You didn't embarrass them, Vanessa. You revealed them. And sometimes truth is the only mirror that can make people finally see. I didn't reply. I just listened to the rustle of leaves, the quiet rhythm of my own breath. The world outside was spinning fast, viral posts, interview requests. But inside, everything had slowed to a still point. For the first time, I wasn't chasing recognition. I wasn't even chasing understanding. I was simply standing in my own light. The one I built. The one no one could take away. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Chloe. I let it ring, then fade into silence. Somewhere beyond that silence, a new sound began. The bell from Memorial Church, slow and deliberate, marking the hour. Each toll echoed. I stood up, tucking the folded speech into my coat pocket. My phone still vibrated faintly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I turned toward the gates, and as I walked into the cool Cambridge night, I whispered to myself the line that had started it all. When they didn't see us, we learned to see each other. This time, I said it not to the crowd, not to the camera, but to the girl I used to be. The one who'd once sat alone at a forgotten table, dreaming of a seat of her own. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my dorm window. My phone had buzzed until nearly dawn. The first message on the lock screen wasn't from a journalist. It was from Mom. We need to talk. This has gone too far. I stared at it. 5 missed calls from Dad. 2 from Chloe, all frantic. I could almost hear that brittle blend of guilt and pride. Grandma was already awake, reading the newspaper, my photo circled on the front page. They're still calling, she asked. I nodded. They said I embarrassed them. Grandma folded her paper. Then maybe embarrassment is the only thing that'll make them finally look in the mirror. Her calm gave me courage. I picked up the phone. Mom's voice burst through, tight and sharp. Vanessa, what on earth were you thinking? Do you know how humiliating this is for us? Everyone's asking why we weren't there. You made it sound like we abandoned you. I kept my tone even. You weren't there, Mom. She hesitated. That's not fair. We were just tired. From Chloe's trip. I finished for her. Dad's voice cut in from the background. Tense. You could have told us you were valedictorian, Vanessa. We would have come if we'd known it was that important. I closed my eyes. You mean, if it was something you could brag about? Silence. The kind that hums with old truths. Grandma leaned forward. Robert, she said, firm but calm. You've missed more important things than a title. You missed her growing up, building herself from scratch. And now that the world finally saw her, you act as if she's the one who's done wrong. Dad crackled through the speaker. Mother, you don't understand. We supported both our girls equally. It's just Chloe always needed more attention. She had events, competitions. And Vanessa had none because you never showed up to the ones she did. Grandma interrupted. I remember the night she won the state essay award. Do you remember that, Judy? You were busy helping Chloe choose her prom dress. Mom's voice wavered. That was years ago. And yet, Grandma said softly, she remembered it enough to write her own ending. The line went quiet. I could hear their breathing. Dad tried again. We didn't mean to hurt her. We just thought, well, Chloe needed us more. She's always been fragile. You know how she gets. I looked at Grandma, who raised her eyebrows, a faint smirk. Fragile or favored. She didn't even need to say. Tired, busy, worried about Chloe. Grandma finally spoke aloud. Those are the words you've used for 20 years to excuse the same absence. But love doesn't wait for perfect timing, Robert. Love doesn't choose the convenient child. The silence that followed was heavy. Mom's voice returned, smaller now. You don't understand, Mother. Vanessa was always so independent. We thought she didn't need us. I inhaled sharply. I didn't need things, Mom. I needed you to show up. That's all. Her breath caught. For a long time, no one spoke. Judy, Grandma said gently, you once told me you raised strong girls. But strength without tenderness isn't pride. It's loneliness. Vanessa learned to be strong because you left her no other choice. Dad sighed. We were doing our best, Mother. We worked hard, provided everything. Everything except presents, Grandma said. And that's the one thing a child never stops waiting for. Mom sniffled. Maybe we made mistakes, but we didn't deserve to be painted as heartless. I looked out the window. You weren't painted as anything, I said quietly. You just weren't there. The camera can't capture people who don't show up. Grandma nodded approvingly. Mom tried to steady her voice. What do you want us to say, Vanessa? We're proud of you, all right? You've accomplished so much, but this public spectacle could have waited until we were ready. That last word, ready. Judy, Grandma's eyes hardened. I've lived long enough to tell you this. Love doesn't wait until you're ready. It shows up when you're needed. And you weren't there when she needed you most. Dad swallowed. What are you saying, Mother? That we're bad parents? No, she said gently. I'm saying you've been absent. And absence, when repeated enough, becomes a habit people mistake for normal. Mom exhaled shakily. We didn't realize it looked that way. You didn't see, Grandma said. That's the difference. The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was the silence of truth landing, slow and heavy. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. Finally, I said softly, I'm not calling to blame you. I'm calling because I'm done explaining. Dad spoke carefully now. Then why are you calling at all? I glanced at Grandma, who nodded, urging me forward. Because I want to give you one more chance, I said. If you want to hear what I've never said, the truth of what it's been like all these years, come to Cambridge tomorrow evening. Just you, Mom, and Chloe. No guests, no excuses. Just family. Mom hesitated. What do you mean? Hear the truth. I mean, I said, you've heard everyone else's version of me. The quiet daughter, the busy one, the one who doesn't need help. It's time you hear mine. The line went quiet. Then Dad cleared his throat. We'll think about it. Grandma's voice came low and certain. Don't think. Just come. And then she reached across the table and ended the call herself, pressing the red button with a firm, deliberate touch. For a while, neither of us spoke. The quiet between us felt sacred. You've given them a door, Vanessa, Grandma said. Whether they walk through it or not, that's on them. Do you think they'll come? I asked, throat tight. She smiled faintly. I think shame is heavy, but curiosity is heavier. They'll come. The question is whether they'll finally listen. Outside, the bells of Memorial Church tolled again, counting down the hours to a conversation 20 years overdue. The next evening, I set a small dinner in my apartment overlooking Harvard Square. Rain was falling softly, and street music drifted up from below. On the dark wooden table, a freshly baked sourdough loaf, tomato soup, arugula salad, and black pepper cheese. 3 candles flickered. I set 4 bowls for spoons, and deliberately left no empty chair at the table. The only spare seat was in the corner, where I'd hung a small wooden sign, for who shows up. They arrived a few minutes late. The knock was hesitant. Dad entered first, quiet, heavy-eyed. Mom followed, clutching her purse like a shield. Chloe came last, her coat draped over one arm, eyes darting uncertainly around my apartment. She lingered on my framed photos. The Charles River at dawn, Widener Library at night, Sanders Theater. I gestured for them to sit. We ate the first few bites in silence, the clinking of spoons on porcelain soft and awkward. I spoke first. The empty chairs have followed me all my life. I began, my voice steady. In 8th grade at the state science fair, your seats were empty because you were helping Chloe pick a prom dress. During my junior year research award, I looked down at the reserve signs swaying in the cold air. No one sitting there except the janitor, clapping quietly by the door. Even yesterday, I set one chair aside, placed flowers on it, and told myself that emptiness is also a kind of presence. At least it's honest now. I paused, breathing in the scent of tomatoes and candle wax. You used to say, "Good job, honey," then switch the topic back to Chloe's travel plans, her dress fittings, her new internship. I stopped expecting more. I became the footnote in someone else's headline. The sister of Chloe. I invited you so many times. I said, my tone even, not angry, and the chair stayed empty. My father set down his spoon, the sound sharp. His hands tightened, then folded. I didn't see, he said after a long silence. I thought you were fine on your own, that you didn't need me there. The words landed softly, like stones dropped into deep water. My mother looked at me longer than she ever had, eyes glassy but steady. I thought you were strong, she whispered. So strong you didn't need your mother. Chloe always needed so much. She panicked. She stumbled. And I kept rushing to her. Her voice faltered. Grandma's words echoed. Love doesn't choose perfect timing. It chooses to show up. I saw my mother realize what she had just confessed. Chloe had been silent, stirring her soup. Finally, she looked up. I was jealous of you, she said softly. I blinked. Jealous. Because you could fly without anyone holding you, she said, her voice trembling. At home, everything revolved around me. I never learned how to stand. And watching you, how the world seemed to find you. I was scared. I thought if I admitted you were better, I'd disappear. There was no triumph in me, just a strange stillness, the kind that comes when the past finally stops spinning. We ate slowly. The soup cooled. When the armor of silence had finally melted, I set the boundary as gently as setting the last candle. I'm not ready to forgive, I said. And I don't need to rush it. Forgiveness isn't a check you sign over one dinner. But I'm ready for something new. To practice showing up. Next time, just come. Come 5 minutes early. Text to ask what time it starts. Sit in the back row. Take a blurry picture. Just be there. My father nodded, not bowed, but with his chin lifted. I'll relearn that, he said quietly. My mother exhaled, a long breath that sounded like something old finally leaving her body. I won't promise with words anymore, she said. I'll promise with when I arrive. Chloe smiled faintly. Send me the dates that matter, she said. I'll be there. Even late, I'll still come. After dinner, they wandered around the apartment. On the wall hung my graduation tassel and a printed copy of my speech, from the empty chair to the open mic. In the corner, the small wooden chair I'd moved there, its back reading, For Who Shows Up. My mother touched its edge. My father stared at his reflection in the framed speech. Chloe took a photo. She didn't post it, just saved it to an album called Things to Remember. When they left, the apartment felt empty, but not hollow. I washed the dishes slowly, the water tapping like a quiet metronome for a new rhythm of family, slower, truer, present. Before turning off the lights, I straightened the frame, brushed a finger over the tassel, and rested my hand on the wooden chair. It was still empty, but no longer lonely. It was an invitation. Some people will come, some never will, but the chair will always stay there as a quiet rule in my life. Those who show up will have a place. And if you're hearing this, wherever you are, on a train, in your kitchen, in a city that doesn't yet know your name, remember this. You don't need to be chosen to have worth. Don't wait for someone to pull out a seat at a table that never called for you. Build your own chair from the wood of effort, the nails of patience, and the paint of kindness. Then, when you're steady, pull up more chairs for those who deserve a place beside you. I keep that sign in my home as a reminder for who shows up. What about you? What sign would hang above your chair? Tell me in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories. Thanks for watching. Take care.